Welcome. You are tuned into Community Chat. My name is Kevin Tachi. I will be your host for this segment. As we attempt to do with this special program is to better inform you about the things that are going on in and around your community. It could be things that are happening in Abington. It could be very much as well as political races. As the next couple of weeks, we're going to find out who candidates are here locally. But we also use this as an opportunity to speak with folks who are going to be running on the state ballot later this year, September and November. We're fortunate today to be speaking with a gentleman who is seeking your vote, your nod, when it comes to the September primary and also, if successful, November. His name is Chris Doughty, and he is a candidate for governor here in the Commonwealth. Chris, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Kevin. It's a real delight to be here.
So,
Thank you.
As I usually do with every guest, this is your opportunity. Just briefly, for folks who don't know who you are, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, well, I really appreciate it. So my wife, Leslie, and we arrived here in 1987. I attended Harvard Business School. We lived in downtown Boston for a number of years. We ended up settling in Rentham. We have 6 children and 4 grandchildren. I bought into a small manufacturing business outside of Boston in Jamaica Plain in the early 1990s, and grew it to a large enterprise, about 800 employees. And one of our larger facilities is here in Rentham, about 300 employees. And we make metal parts that go into cars, appliances, lawnmowers. Most citizens in Massachusetts have one of our parts located somewhere within their car.
So I would ask you, what was the decision like? You're a successful businessman. What was the decision that made you say, I want to run for statewide office and I want to run for governor?
Yeah, thank you for asking me that. As you can imagine, this is a weighty decision to make a decision like this, but there were a couple of factors in my mind. One is, I saw a situation where there was a very high likelihood that we were going to lose a conservative voice from the State House. And if we lost the governor's office from a conservative voice, I believe we would lose about 40% of the citizens' voice from state government. And as a business owner, as a father, I just felt like that would be terrible for our state, would take us too progressive too quickly, and would have long-term damage on the citizens. That was one. The other one is that I've become increasingly concerned with the affordability problems in our state. As a business owner, we are now the most expensive state in the country to operate a business, number one. And as far for our citizens, we're now the 3rd most expensive state in the country to live here. And I hear it from my employees every day, just how difficult it is to pay the rent and the groceries and the taxes. And began to kind of weigh on my heart that these are problems that could be solved. Someone like me from the business world could solve it. And just felt a desire to give back. Also, I was at a point in my life with my children. They've left the house, and my wife, Leslie, and I were looking for an opportunity to give back to the community and the state that's been so good to us and our business, that we felt like it was the right time for us to step out and give back to the state that we've been really fortunate, really blessed to live here.
So what sets you apart from other candidates? You have opposition within the party, and we know that there are a couple of well-known names in the Democratic Party. What sets you apart?
Right now there's 4 candidates, and 3 of them I would classify as social activists, and then there's a businessman. I was up in Lowell not long ago, and a man stopped me and goes, "Oh, you're the businessman that's in the race." And I said, "Yeah, that's me." So I am different. I'm an outsider. I come from the business community. I'm very much in line with past governors in Massachusetts that came from the business community, that are comfortable, building teams and working across all aspects of government and hiring people and running a large corporation. Some people forget that the governor is not really a social activist. The governor runs the largest corporation in Massachusetts. It's $50 billion, has 44,000 employees. And the bulk of the job is really running a really good, strong state government. And that's where I come from. And that's what I offer to the citizens, is someone that's competent and skilled and able to run a large organization with a lot of employees and be successful at it.
Your team has already announced that you have a running mate. Give us the details on the lieutenant governor who is going to be joining you on the ticket, and hopefully your administration.
Yeah, her name is Kate Campanelli. She was a state legislator out of the 17th district in Worcester, highly skilled. She also spent time as a school teacher in the classroom, which I really like because I was looking for someone that could help our educational system. And I really believe education occurs in the classroom. That's where the focus should be. And she has that relevant experience. She's a fourth generation from Worcester, so knows it really well. And maybe my favorite part is that the citizens of Massachusetts will love Kate because she loves them. So you sense it right away in her heart that she's like me. She just wants to give back and make a difference and contribute to the well-being of all the citizens. So I'm just delighted to have her on the ticket. When you launch these campaigns, you don't really know how it's going to go exactly. And have someone like Kate be my running mate, I just couldn't be happier.
How will COVID play a role in electing the next governor?
Yeah, I'm hopeful that by November, this is behind us. It feels like it's coming to the end. The next governor's got some real opportunity to get us all back to work. The message from the Doughty administration will be, hey, we're back open for business. We are, let's get the kids being kids again. Let's get our schools back up fully running. And I'm really looking forward to it. I hope to bring a sense of optimism and hope and energy to the Commonwealth. I think hopefully COVID will be behind us. We won't have to talk about it so much.
You've mentioned it before in regards to rising costs. Inflation is an issue. Fuel costs potentially could cripple our economy, not only nationwide, but here in the Commonwealth. Now, if this trend continues, what will your administration have to do to prevent the state from going into another recession?
I appreciate that question. I'm old enough to know that recessions happen. I've lived through two of them. I suspect the next governor might have to face a recession. So I think as citizens, we've got to pick a governor that can handle it, because a recession could have, real impacts on our state. We have a lot of debt in our state. In fact, we have more debt on our books than any other state in the country. And if interest rates go up as part of that recession, or if the federal government starts cutting back on their funding of our state, we could really face some headwinds. And I'm comfortable with that. As a person that's made auto parts for my whole life, I'm very accustomed to difficulties and challenges and headwinds, and I feel I could be ready for it. Now, your question about energy is a really important question for our state. We keep cutting off supply of energy, and the prices keep going up and up and up. We currently are the third highest state in the country for electric costs. It's forecasted that we could be number one in the next couple of years. I'm one of the largest buyers of electricity in the southern part of Massachusetts, and it's a bit scary. I heard from ISO last summer that if the heat wave continued, there is a good chance we were going to have rolling blackouts, and that is really worrisome. And I think the Doughty administration on day one, I'm going to bring all the stakeholders together and say we've got to increase supply. Our electric rates should be close to the average of the U.S. It shouldn't be the most expensive in the country. We're going to lose too many businesses. And then if a recession hits and we lose all those businesses, it is a bit worrisome. But I'm ready for it. I buy a lot of electricity. I'm very comfortable with supply-demand problems, and we'll just work on supply on day one.
Would your administration be welcoming to any renewable energy initiatives that might come forth, and would you want to incentivize those in order to kind of reduce what the costs are?
Absolutely. I've said a couple times that there's two goals I have, and both goals are important. One goal is to do our part as a state to combat climate change. That is important, and I recognize that. The second goal is to get our energy costs to the average of the U.S. I would like to say that within the first 4 years of our administration, we'd like to get energy costs below the top quartile. And then after 8 years of our administration, we'd like to be near the mean or the average. And I think both those goals are important. And I think the citizens, they'll get behind both goals, because I think our citizens want to contribute to combating climate change, but they also want to be able to live here and to prosper and be successful and pay their bills. So we would have both those goals.
At the time of this conversation that you and I are having, there was something that your campaign has actually published in the Boston Herald in regards to energy. Could you share?
Yeah, we propose that we suspend the gas tax, which is 24 cents a gallon, during this crisis of highly inflated gas prices. It translates to about $200 to $400 a year for each citizen, so it's not a huge number, but it's symbolic, and you can buy bread with it. You can buy milk. I was in Bellingham the other day, and a man stopped me and said, "Hey, now I have to choose between buying groceries or filling my car or heating my house." And that was heartbreaking to hear. And it's true for those citizens of our state that are on fixed income or that are working families. The repeal of that gas tax for a time being would be helpful for them. The other thing I like about this idea is that it benefits everyone. It's not just one party or one group. It doesn't select a certain group of people, and it goes to everyone. The other thing is it can be done quickly. Now, the state legislator came out and said that, or the leadership came out and said it was a gimmick. And in the business world, we call it a good idea, not a gimmick. Good ideas come from lots of different places. The state has the funding for it. They're spending it on a lot of other things that the citizens don't get to enjoy. So to me, it's a good idea. It can be done quickly, and it would be a benefit to all of our citizens in our state. Also, throughout the country, this is being passed by many governors. So if I was governor, this would be certainly a proposal on my desk.
A couple of items that are usually talked about during the election cycle is local aid, specifically when it comes to education, Chapter 70 funding, what's being done to fix local roads, sidewalks, bridges, Chapter 90 monies. What does a Doughty administration do in regards to those avenues of funding for local communities, municipalities? I think it was the Globe had put out a survey to ask all the candidates how many of them would provide the guarantee to the towns and the communities like they've had for a very long time. And ours was the only campaign, surprisingly, that said we would continue the guarantee to the towns. As a business owner and one that invests in capital and does a lot of hiring, I understand that you need to know what your budget is this year, but you also need to know what your budget is 2-3 years from now, particularly for capital investments and hiring. And I was really surprised. We were the only campaign that said we would guarantee it, so all the towns know. Now, I'm a finance man, and I've been looking at the budget carefully, and I'm surprised that we don't give more funds to the towns and to the municipalities and the cities. The state keeps so much of it, and it's surprising to me from the business world. On day one, I'd like to look at this question of, does the state need to keep all this money and give so little to the towns and communities? It feels to me on the outside that we should be transferring more of our money to the towns and the communities for schools, police, and community and infrastructure improvement. There's really no reason we should have more potholes and bad sidewalks than New Hampshire. Their weather's like ours. And I think the difference is that in New Hampshire, more of the money goes to those things than we do in Massachusetts. And I would like to work on that. While we're sitting here, we're talking about education and we're talking about transportation. The other thing that has been in short supply here in Massachusetts is housing. And if we're going to welcome folks back and lure folks back to the state of Massachusetts, what needs to be done in regards to the housing stock and the availability of affordable homes?
Yeah, I've been talking to developers about this because this is a question that I have, is why are we having such a problem with housing supply? And they told me it's basically just regulation. I was talking to one developer, he was telling me that to build more affordable housing, it takes about 6 years in Massachusetts. And about 18 months to 2 years to construct, and about 4 years worth of regulation and paperwork. There's multiple agencies. He was saying there's like 6 different agencies you have to get approval from in addition to the towns. And he said they budget in, 4 to 5 years worth of regulation. This very much plays to my skill set as a manufacturing man. And so, I'd be anxious to get in there and just start looking at the worst regulation that's adding all the time and all the cost to build homes here and start repealing them, pulling them back one at a time. We can do it. A lot of other states do it. I have a policy, a legislator in Utah I was talking to, he said they can do it in about 18 months, go through all the paperwork. And so here in Massachusetts, 4 to 6 years worth of paperwork, and out in some other states, it's about a year to 18 months.
Okay. Also ranking up there, I think, with voters is affordable health care. And Massachusetts has been the leader on multiple occasions, whether when it was Romney Care, to having a website that can be navigated and provide affordable health care. Where does that rank on your list of issues to make sure that folks are able to have health care and also be able to have the best of the care that's affordable?
Yeah, when you look at our state finances, at the detail I've looked at them, it's surprising how much of our state budget goes into healthcare, health and human services. It grows every year, and it's gone up in the last 10 years. It's gone up about, I think about 12, 15%, and that's crowded out education, police funding, community investment. And so as the largest item in the state budget, as governor, I would look at it carefully. In my business world, it's the same type of thing. I have a couple of products that we spend the most amount of money on, and that's where I spend the most amount of time on, is negotiating, making sure we're getting the best value for each dollar. And so I would do that the same as governor, is I would peel back, okay, why are we spending so much money on health and human services, and what can we do about it? There's a lot of really bright people in state government, a lot of really bright people in our state. I think we could start working on some innovations and some ideas to pull back some of that cost. Our state does really well here. We're ranked as one of the most insured states in the nation. So I don't want to lose anything that we're doing well with, but I would like to make sure that we're not wasting money. Government's big and there's a lot of money moving around. We don't audit as well as we should, I don't think. And so I would just do like I've done for my career, is just peel back each cost and make sure it's being spent wisely.
What are you hearing from the voters since you've launched your campaign and you've had a chance to meet them, whether you met them in person or virtually? What are you hearing from them? What are some of the top concerns they have, and what have you said to them to address those concerns?
Well, okay. First, on affordability, that's number one. Everybody's feeling it right now. And, they talk to their friends and family that live in other parts of the country that are not experiencing the inflation like we are. Our state is seeing greater inflation relative to wage increases than any other state. And they feel it. The people that work for state government feel it maybe the most. Our wage increases to those that are in the state, that work for the state, are seeing the worst inflation relative to their wages as anyone else in our country. I also hear a lot about roads and infrastructure, sidewalks. I hear concerns about ideological agendas coming to the school systems for the children. A lot of concern among the parents with the schools sort of the children being influenced by ideology. Interesting enough that there is some concern with regards to a future recession. I think people, particularly the older people, know, hey, we've been through it before, and are we ready for it as a state? Are the companies going to leave? So I think there's quite a bit to worry about. I think as governors work late, they put in a lot of time and energy to try and meet all these needs of the citizens and also address the concerns that the citizens are feeling and that they have.
Probably one of my last questions I would ask you is in regards to coastal communities. We know that we're dealing with rising sea issues. Being the governor, you will have to address that if there are any, especially when we have major storms that usually hit the Northeast in the wintertime. You see a lot of coastal communities like the Situates, the Marshfields, the Plymouths that see significant amount of damage and seawall damage. What does a Doughty administration do in regards to remediation when it comes to seawalls and coastal communities?
Yeah, well, speaking broadly, so this isn't, I would call this capital improvements, capital investments. And this very much is my life story, is where to invest the limited resources you have in capital. I always start in my business life, start with where is the risk? Because capital investment very much ties to risk, is where do you see the greatest risk? I would go right to those communities and say, tell me about the risks that you see, and let's rank it. In the auto parts world, you rank your risks. It's like 1 through 10. And so I would take a very practical, common sense approach and say, okay, let's take all the risks that we have in our coastal communities, what cities, what towns, what seawalls, to your point, and let's rank them. And then let's make sure that we've got the dollars rolling to those that have the highest risk. And once you get through the highest risk, then you move to the medium risk, lower risk. And then at the end is all the part everybody wants to talk about, which is the fun things that you do with capital, building new buildings and et cetera, et cetera. But I certainly would start with the highest risk areas first, like seawalls.
How do you feel, as if you're elected governor, how important is your relationship with the folks down in D.C., regardless of party affiliation, to be able to get the most, amount of funding as needed to help the Commonwealth in tough times?
Kevin, that's a good question. No one's asked me that question yet, but it's critical because 30% of our funding, 27% of our funding comes from the federal government, plus other incentives. Additionally, the federal government's been funding our state with all these recent bills that have passed. So it's critically important. And it's important not just for this year and next year, but as governor, I would really want to know, okay, tell me about our funding from the federal government 8 years from now, 10 years from now, 12 years from now, because we need to get ready for those. With the federal deficit as large as it is, I think most of us are saying, okay, it's hard to imagine the federal government can keep funding every state to the degree they've been funding. And what does that look like? I won't be governor forever, but I would like to leave the House in better condition than when I get there. And so I want to have a good sense what it'll look like 10 years from now with federal investments in our state to make sure that we're in a good position when that occurs, if they do cut back our funding.
Almost like a blank check, what I'm going to ask you is like an open question. Is there something I haven't asked you in regards to your platform running for governor? A question that hasn't been asked, but that you might want to take a moment to talk about?
I do. Thank you, Kevin. All of us as citizens have a question that's coming up, and this is a really, really important question. In my mind, it's maybe the most important question coming up in November, which is, do you want the State House to be controlled by one single party and one single voice? That's the decision we all have to make. If you say, no, I want the checks and balances, regardless of my party, I like there to be some tension and some disagreement, and I want there to be different voices, then I hope you'll vote for Governor Doughty, candidate Doughty. If you feel that, no, we should have one party control every office in state government, then I understand. But when I look at Oregon and San Francisco and Washington and Illinois, I really don't see a state that we want to become. I just don't think that's what we want. That in Oregon, they've got homeless camps. In San Francisco, they have parents fleeing. And just in these other states, there's not many states that would be as controlled by one single party as ours would be after November. I see a world in the future, a year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years from now that looks dramatically different than the world we have now if we have just one progressive party controlling every office in the state house. And so I'm going to make that case throughout the campaign to really, really consider that. What do you think the world will look like if one party dominates every office of the state house after November?
If anyone who is watching this from home wants to reach out to, they want to learn more about your campaign, what are the ways that they can do that, whether it's social media or a website?
Yeah, thank you. Well, when I launched the campaign, I said I can't do it alone. It just won't work alone. So I need some help. I need as many citizens that are willing to join in and help us at least keep the voice in the state house. So my website is chris4ma.com, and we're open for everyone to join us, and we hope they do.
Well, Chris, we want to thank you so much for joining us and being a guest on this program.
Thank you, Kevin. It's a real delight, and wonderful questions, really, really, really meaningful questions that I think are helpful for our citizens to think through.
And if you're just tuning in, we've been speaking with Chris Doughty. He is a candidate for governor here in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Remember, your voice matters. Get out and vote, whether it's the September primary or the November general election. Until next time, have a great day.